You can't just ignore Mitch Morgan and his heirs and hope they don't come after me, I explained to my mother as I stepped around the kitchen boxes and back into our old dining room. The House of Morgan owns everything, and our fruits are just part of their corporate machine. That's not fair. Ellie, my mother, only came up to my shoulder, but she had the personality of a giant. She stopped packing her china in boxes, glared at me, and then crossed her arms. Your father and I operate an independent farm, and we choose who buys our products. I pushed my short blondish bob behind my ears and counted to 5 so I wouldn't yell. And you and Dad chose to make money and sell everything with the Morgan's corporate chains. We even bank at the bank they are the majority shareholders of. I dropped the hand I had on my hip and brushed it down my black dress. With Dad on the mend from his heart attack, I'll go to Mitch Morgan's funeral and pay our family respects in his place. You've done your hair and gussied up, which I don't understand. You shouldn't bother looking pretty for those boys. In fact, you shouldn't go at all. Ellie shook her head like her decrees mattered. Done issuing her dramatic over-the-top orders, she reached down to seal the box with tape. That family is nothing but trouble. I inhaled as fire caught in my blood. Mom, the wake and funeral will be on television. The President of the United States will be there. I can't go looking like a farmer. You should. My mother dropped the tape onto the dining room chair already wrapped for delivery. The plastic cartridge bounced. Ellie pressed her hand against my cheek. I expected a goodbye, but my mother said instead, "Be sure to kick over the casket and light a match to ensure Mitch Morgan's body burns in hell." I stepped back. You're being unreasonable. We hardly spoke to Mitch Morgan, and his contract with our farm has been very lucrative. Your father had no choice but to sign. My mother crossed her arms again. I shook my head. No one forced Dad. He made a choice that made us all money. My mother pursed her lips. He should have listened to me and never signed. I rolled my eyes. He did what he thought was right for us. You and Colton need to be smarter. I know your brother would agree with me that those contracts should die just like Mitch did. Why was she bringing Colt into this? He understood that we never saw the Morgans anyhow, but the contract with them ensured we had a buyer for all our produce. I tried to keep my voice even as I said, Dad trusted the farm to Colt and me after his heart attack. We will make the decisions about the farm and the contracts. My mother lifted her chin. The renewal period is starting, and now that Mitch is dead, don't coerce Colt into signing. I held back my sigh. Once again, my mother went over the top with her feelings on all things named Morgan. No one forced our father, and no one would force my brother or me into any agreements. You weren't always this ridiculous. As a child, I spent years with the Morgans. Vicky was my friend. Ellie clearly wasn't done, her arms crossed as if it was the only body posture she had today. No, she wasn't your friend. You should have grown out of that. Grown out of what? Your belief that Victoria Morgan was your friend. I froze. My fingers trembled and I reached up to clutch the best friend's forever necklace Vicky had given me years ago. Mom, stop. She's been dead for 3 years now. My mother's eyes missed it. I'm sorry. I just love my family and don't want you hurt. I hugged my mother to forgive her, though she shouldn't have spoken ill of Vicky. It was time to pay my respects to my friend's family. I patted my mother's back. You aren't half as mean as you claim to be when it comes to the Morgans. You'd never really kick over the casket. You have no idea about that. Mitch Morgan deserves whatever happens to him in the afterlife. Ellie pushed my hair back. And wipe that lipstick off your face so you don't look like a clown. Ellie turned to look out the window, and I followed her gaze. The sky was a brilliant blue, and the smell of ripe strawberries drifted into the house as the wind rustled the crops. I rubbed my arms. Mom, soon you get to move into that new condo on the beach and go to those awesome 55 and older parties every night. My mother gave a reluctant smile, then nodded. The beach is going to be great. I was also moving out of this house to my own condo, though I doubted there were any events or activities I'd have time for other than work. Now that my brother was getting married, Colt intended to raise his family here, so at least the farm would go on through them. This week, Colt had ended his service in the Marines, so he could take over the day-to-day farm work while I used my college degree to manage the business aspects. I glanced in the one-hall mirror left on the wall near the front door and ensured I had no lipstick on my teeth. I said, Mom, everything is going to work out. Be peaceful. Ellie tilted her head. Your father can't stay here and not try to help out and run the farm. It's hard for him. We have to do what's best for Dad's heart. I stepped beside her and took her hand. Colin's organic fruits will stay profitable and Dad can come visit, but he's not allowed to work. Ellie's eyes became glassy. Agreed. My niece chose that moment to bounce into the room. Blonde ringlets surrounding her angelic face bobbed as she carried her small brown teddy bear. I knelt down. Come here and give me a hug. Claire's little hands wrapped around me and the ever-present teddy bear. The scent of strawberries wafted into my nose. "You look so pretty, like my Barbie doll." I smiled at the 3-year-old girl. "My niece lived here with us while Colt was away. I'll never be as sweet as you are, princess." "Aunt Alice, will you take me for ice cream?" Clara's small hands circled my neck. I sighed. I'd rather spend the day with Clara than face the funeral, though I couldn't. Our family needed to stick together, despite what my mother said about the Morgans. Today, I would represent the Collins family. I would ensure that Peter renewed the contract that guaranteed 100% of our farm's items would be shelved in various stores throughout the nation, and that my family would make money. I can't. I unwrapped myself from Clara's hug. I stood and fixed the strap on my black high heel. I have to go to a wake on business. Clara's baby blue eyes were wide and full of wonder. "What's a wake? Do you have to wake someone up and jump on the bed?" "No, sweetheart, but that does sound fun." I smiled and checked my dress in the mirror. John had been so shut down the day of Vicky's funeral. I used to have a major crush on him. I hadn't seen him in years. I fixed my earring. "It'd be good for Grandma." Clara nodded and bopped her head to some imaginary music on her way back to the living room. I applied one more coat of lipstick. Finished, I packed my pocketbook. I heard my mother's tongue click against her teeth, but I ignored the sound. At the door of our old house, I turned, and the entire place was packed with boxes. All the walls were empty. It felt like I was leaving, almost like I'd never come back to my parents, though I had another week until I could move into my new condo. The bare walls held no sign of my childhood. Bye, Mom. With the first step onto the porch, the hot South Florida air warmed my skin. The smell of citrus eased my nerves. Naval season would be over in a month. I headed to my white SUV, caressing the 18-karat gold necklace. Today I would show up for the funeral out of obligation and love of my dead friend. Waiting for the air conditioner to cool me down, I reviewed my plan. Peter Morgan, the oldest, would likely take over, and I'd deal with him for business. My family needed to keep that contract with Morgan Enterprises. To lose it would be a death knell to the Collins farm, since the House of Morgan had their hands in almost everything. No other corporation would touch us if we were deemed unfit in any way. The Morgan Bank holdings stretched far beyond the stores they invested in, and I didn't want to answer the questions that might naturally arise if we ended with a bad rating. I rubbed the back of my neck. The full blast of air cleared my mind, and I drove down the dirt road, headed toward the paved roads and Coral Gables, which would be an hour more with traffic. Tonight, I'd stay at a hotel so I didn't have to do this drive twice. Perhaps I'd go to the spa for a massage to ease my tired muscles, a welcome change from packing boxes. The wake and the funeral would be spectacles in and of themselves. At the funeral home, I drove past so many people in the press. I wondered if this was a world premiere of a Hollywood movie and not a funeral for a business tycoon. Cameras took my picture in the car. I covered my face to avoid direct eye contact and slid into a parking spot. My heels clapped against the pavement as I hurried toward the funeral home, and the press called out for smiles. I cringed. Victoria had been a poster child for fashion and elegance, the friend who had taught me how to put on makeup. I was plain with hair that wasn't truly brown, but not blonde either. At the door to the funeral home, I stopped. Jennifer Gonzalez, the television beauty, held Peter Morgan's arm like they were an item. Jennifer was always sharp with her insults. I swallowed. The two of them probably laid in bed together and made fun of the less fortunate, also known as everyone who wasn't them. I never understood how sweet Victoria Morgan had such a friend as Jennifer. I stood in line to say hello until I reached Peter and Jennifer. Peter was still speaking to whoever was in front of him in the line, but Jennifer tilted her head. "Oh, look, the help arrived." Jennifer's beauty would someday melt off her face and she'd be left an old wrinkled hag. I bit back my retort and smiled. I came out of respect for Victoria. She was my friend. Jennifer shrugged and gazed at me up and down. "Hard to remember what she saw in you. She died years ago. Did you buy that off a rack?" "Most people do." I hugged my waist and chose to ignore anything else Jennifer said. I continued down the line despite my goosebumps. "Peter." He glanced at me and then spoke to the man behind me in line like he was someone important and I was not. I pressed my lips together and prayed this had no significance to my own contract renewal. As I stepped aside, my stomach knotted. Jennifer's jab still ate at me, even now. My mind reeled with memories of how Jennifer made my life hell back in school. I rolled my eyes every time I saw another telenovela starring that woman. I turned the corner and walked straight into a wall of muscle. Hard arms wrapped around my waist and then steadied me. I stepped out of the man's embrace, though my legs were weak, and gazed upward. John Morgan leaned back and my mouth opened in surprise. His hair was slightly darker now, though it still had strands of pale blonde, but those piercing blue eyes and his huge dimples were the same. He had lost all pretense of boyhood. The man before me was gorgeous. He was 2 years older than me, but he had never been this hot. I swallowed and told myself that They would never happen. I was country and the Morgans were players in a game of rule the world with their banks. I steadied my feet as anchors because my head grew light near him. With bravado, I smiled. John, it's been a long time. At least I coughed out a sentence that made sense. I took a deep breath. Thank you for coming. It was clear he didn't remember my name. I sucked in my bottom lip, embarrassed. We'd spent hours together at Vicky's funeral, where he clearly tried to forget his past with numerous shots of whiskey. I sighed. I'm Alice Collins. I was a friend of Victoria's, the tomboy. John smiled and showed twin dimples just on each corner of his mouth. I heard what Jennifer said to you. Don't listen to her. You fill out a dress nicely. At least someone liked my dress. John's face showed sophistication as he scanned the room, studying all the doors and windows. My jaw clenched as I guessed he was either a cop or a mobster. In this family, was there any difference? I had no idea what to say or how to excuse myself. I was like a groupie with a rock star. His hand settled on my back and my body melted like butter. Will you escort me to get a drink, Alice? My lips wouldn't move. Not good. John Morgan wasn't supposed to be attractive anymore. I thought I was over my crush on the former high school football captain. I curled my arm around his. I tried to say something intelligible, but instead I blurted, "Didn't you recognize me a minute ago?" From Vicky's funeral, but I tried hard to forget everyone in this city after that. You were the only other person genuinely upset. The only real person there. I understood. We progressed in step. She wouldn't want you to suffer all your life. My father did something to her. He stopped at the bar, and I don't know what happened, but I haven't been able to forget. I pointed to the Sauvignon Blanc. John tugged his ear and nodded to the waiter. I stared at him, unsure what to talk about besides the past, and there was nothing any of us could do. Vicky disappeared without a word, and then she was dead. What do you remember about her? Her kindness and her laugh. I looked toward the room where a few heads of state gathered around Mitch Morgan in his practically royal casket. John's gaze contained a firestorm of emotion. I tilted my head. You going in there? His expression turned hard and cold. Then he stepped backwards, but his stare never left his father's casket. The steely expression changed to fiery. You can if you want. I hugged my waist. I'd asked the wrong thing. My heart fluttered near John, but I tried to act like an adult instead of a teenager. It was good to see him again. I came out of respect for Vicky. He placed his hand on my arm to lead me to an empty space along the wall. My skin became alive as he said, I came because Peter asked. He wants to pretend we're a happy family for the world to see. Look at him now. He's over there as the new king. He leaned against the wall and let the throngs of people pass. I followed suit, standing next to him as I sipped my wine. I assumed he was taking over. Did you want that job? John's entire body jumped as if I'd slapped him. Hell no. I gulped my sip fast. I kept saying the wrong thing. Inside his blue eyes was a kaleidoscope of emotion. I remembered that he used to be kind. I rubbed my lips together. Then who cares? He drank his wine and scanned the room. After making the rounds with his gaze, he took in my entire figure with an intensity that made my knees weak. What is it you do, Alice? Collins Organic Farm. I brushed my brown bob behind my ear. I work for my family. What is it you do? Again, his blue eyes flashed as if lightning was in his stare. I watched him, hypnotized. I work in real estate. Liar. I tilted my head. He definitely didn't work in real estate. I crossed my arm around my chest. Without another word, I waited for the fallout of my remark. His eyebrows quirked in shock, then his dimples appeared. What do you think I do? I met his smile with my own. Professional bad boy and poker player, it's what I always thought. He chuckled. I played football. I nodded. A moment of silence clung in the air as I sipped my drink. Then I said, I went to your games in high school, but I also remember how you set up more than a few poker games. You always read people correctly. His sexy smile lit the room and my skin melted, literally fused into itself. I remember that. You cheered with my sister and I played you too. Perhaps I shouldn't spend the funeral with John, but then again, Vicky's older brother could be a good friend to have in my corner for help with the contract. You did. I'm glad you remember more than just us talking at funerals. His gaze went past me and flashed toward the casket. He stood straighter and it seemed as if a dark cloud passed over him. His face hardened. You going in there? I placed my hand on my hip and shouted after him, John Morgan, don't you dare sit in judgment of me and my family. We work hard every day for what we produce, and we're proud of it. What have you ever done? John stopped, turned. His gaze stayed on me for several beats. Then he stormed down the hall like he'd been stung by an entire swarm of wasps. I rubbed my arms. Unsure what to do, I retreated inside the vestry. I'd come to this affair to be seen, and it was time I knelt at the altar to get my picture taken just like every other person here. John Morgan could rot. My crush on him died today, finally. I hadn't seen him since the day my best friend was buried, and there was clearly a good reason to stay far away. Self-absorbed jerks didn't deserve my time.